Scanning for audio.
Welcome, once again, to another Tin Dog podcast. Talking about episode 5 of The War Between the Land and the Sea. Okay, so it's an hour long, and it was on at 8:05 on a Sunday. Now, I know this is the run-up to the week before Christmas, so everything's going to be a little bit, hurried. I did argue the point very early on that we should have had 5 weeks where we had each individual episode, and you know what? I can completely see why I was very, very wrong. Let's look at a chart, an X and a Y axis. On the vertical axis, you've got how much I enjoyed it. And across the bottom, you've got, time progressing. And you've got something quite high up at the beginning of the season, and then you've got a progressive decline. However, also on this same axis, same chart, you've got a line that's underneath all of this massive descending triangle, and that is how much I've enjoyed TV Doctor Who of late. And that's still far below any point on this massive triangle. A line immediately above all of these figures going up and down, but never going below the War Between the Land and the Sea, is how much I enjoy Doctor Who on audio. You can imagine that. I won't even bother drawing it for you. Basically, I've not enjoyed TV Doctor Who, and I've enjoyed this more than TV Doctor Who, but it still was a fairly predictable and not great ending. There was an announcement on the TV when it said, hey, you must pay attention, you must watch the post-credit scene. So I made my family not switch the TV off at the end, which was actually more of a challenge than I thought it would be. And then there was a bit where Lethbridge Stewart, where Kate, threatens the guy who looks a lot like the bloke who was running the water company, which is where I thought it was going, because I was like, oh my God, he's not dead. What's going on? Was it actually... No, forget that. They should have hired someone who didn't look like the guy who was running the water company. And then she says, hey, pick it up. And then, gets the gun out and it's hilarious. And that gets to be an internet meme forever. Keep Britain tidy or Kate will get you and she'll hire your kids. No, none of that. Then I thought, that can't be the most exciting post-credit scene, so I made them watch more. And then there was an advert for Traitors, which I'm guessing isn't Doctor Who related. Although I must admit I would be interested in some sort of who would kick who off and celebrity traitors if it was all the doctors. That's a podcast for another time. Okay, so rather than just have a moan, which is of course the want of every single Doctor Who fan in the world, it's what we're here for. Sadly, it actually is what a lot of people are here for. I'm not. I'm here for the enjoyment. I'm here for the excitement, the adventure, the really wild things. But it just kind of didn't appeal. It went progressively downhill from the beginning, had a great start. And lots of brilliant moments. There were some great moments, there really were. Give Me My Prescription will go down, in history. This has been the highlight of her entire time on TV Doctor Who. I was kind of hoping that Osgood would turn up and seize control from Kate. And if this was a longer TV series, perhaps that would have happened. But this ain't Torchwood, and we're just not going to get that sort of thing anymore. Salt's characterization changed from strong and in control and thrusting forward and knowing what she wanted to giddy teenager, because she was just so in love with Barclay, the sound baffles, all that. Okay, I can't understand how this episode was an hour long and yet felt so bloated and so overly long, and it also felt so slow. It has felt slow because I didn't care about the relationship. I was caring about the war. And I know it's supposed to be all kind of, oh, it's a romance between these two people. No, she's a lizard/fish. And I get that. I'm probably being racist or homophobic or something, or one of the isms, or one of the ists. You know what I mean. There's a scene where Barclay's opening up his heart to his ex-wife. And as an audience, you're just sat there feeling a little bit uncomfortable. You're not rooting for him. You're not going, yeah, it's love, it's real love. And then his wife gives him a hug. I must admit, perhaps I'm just not the bigger man. But if your ex was going on about their new girlfriend and how you're heartbroken, you just, maybe if I'm not the bigger man, would probably go, yeah. I don't know, it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like the great romance. It just felt like it. And when Barclay's going on about his sore neck, you were going, oh, he's growing gills then, smashing. Because we're all related to fish somewhere along the line. It's probably just resetting some original DNA coding or something. Oh, and when the doctor's saying, revealing what's actually going on, and of course as an audience you already kind of figured it out, there were scans behind him of his brain. Were you thinking that he was dying? Were you thinking that, I don't know, my wife's suggestion was that Barclay was pregnant in a kind of a seahorse kind of a way. That would have been an interesting storyline. Actually, it wouldn't have, but you can see why it might have gone that way. We all had ideas of where it was going, and then it fell into that War of the Worlds problem. Let me explain. In the two narratives that you can use to see influence this piece, you've got War of the Worlds, which is the virus kills the aliens, which is not cinematically great. You've got a virus killing people. Ooh. You don't get to see any of the actual deaths. You see the floating bodies, but you don't get to see any of the actual virus attacking people. We can talk about how it was spread in a minute, and that gets even more annoying. But then you've also got the Kraken Awakes, the John Wyndham story. Now, the book itself's very, very good. But the problem is, it's all about an alien invasion, but the creatures live under the sea and you never actually get to see them. And then they win by doing something under the sea, but you don't get to see any of it. Now, you can kind of get away with it in a novel, but this is TV, this is cinema, this is show, don't tell. So when you discuss Severance at the beginning, and then you also discuss Accord and things like that, which I'm pretty sure got mentioned in episode 1, but that kind of thing, nothing's happening on screen, nothing's happening in front of you. It's a bit weird. You're not getting to see it. You're getting to see what happens afterwards, which leaves you kind of wanting more. For something that apparently happens a lot at sea, then, well, I don't know, this is missing. Okay, other things. The massive exploding tank at the end. Okay, let's discuss a bit of physics. It's a big tank and it cracks, and in the TV series, the water sloshes forward. The tank is full. It's not that full, and it's not being pumped up. So what would happen is it would all burst out, and then you'd be able to solve the problem using mopping. Yes, there would be some force coming through the door if you follow the TV narrative. However, think about it for a minute. The water's being held in place against its will, so to speak, against the laws of physics. You know, it's been into a tank and the water's been pumped up. A crack appears in it. What happens is the air enters the tank, not the water coming out of the tank. The air goes in and everything flushes out into the Thames because that's what happens. It's the path of least resistance. The air goes in and then the tank would empty and you get it, right? So that's what would have happened. Chink, chink, chink goes the glass and the air rushes in and the tank empties. Now, the problem with the thing was I was actually expecting a Merca to appear and come out of the pipe and then start rampaging around and killing people, which would have been absolutely hilarious and brilliant. But that didn't happen. It would have been great. We have, the Merca's actually on computer. It works. We could have had that. We could have had a giant sea devil killing machine just take out all of the important people. That would have been great and expensive and didn't actually happen. Some people have complained about the quality of computer graphics, but I don't see that being a problem. Okay, so we've dealt with how crap the tank was. Let's deal with a few other things. We've got how the virus was spread, and we've also got Barclay's prisoner-esque being taken out in the hotel room. Okay, so we've got the apparent traitor person who's on the board, who's on the guard, and then he ends up poisoning the food, so Barclay falls asleep. But then you've got overly complicated moments with a room full of people, very, very heavily employed people, who are all sealing up the doorways for no really reason, and then they are moving on and taking fingerprints from glasses for no adequately explored reason, and so on and so on. And then they inject him, and then they spray his face. Is that to wake him up, or is that to give him the thing in his DNA? I mean, how's she going to get? Is it passed by the kissing still? But if the DNA is in his blood, and so on and so on, and they needed her in order to spread it, but then they didn't because they were we need the body, and how the science clearly isn't thought out or working, because in the other earlier episodes they needed her body regardless of whether it was alive or dead, but now they just needed to spray his face with some sort of illness, or was that the injection? Was the injection to wake him up? Was it to keep him asleep? None of this was really clear. Perhaps I just need things laid out, but the system, the process wasn't really there. So then he kisses Salt, and then apparently Salt goes off and kisses loads of other people, and then they all get the virus. Because the alternative would have been working out where the sea devils were and just dropping big tanks of the virus into the sea, which you could have done weeks earlier, or pumping it into the water system, or practically any other way of getting it back into the sea, and then it spreads around the world. There could have been a montage. There wasn't. You didn't need Barclay for this at all. You didn't need any interaction with Salt at all. I don't understand what they were getting at, which means they just had to bring it back to Barclay in order to have some sort of Romeo and Juliet type thing, forbidden love. The business with him screaming into the channel in a very clear bit. Now, I know that the south coast of the UK can actually be quite clean. The waters around the UK are cleaner than they've been. Well, no. I would say they've been clean, but they're not as clean as they were. There was a period about a decade ago when they were incredibly clean. But then things, well, that's what this programme's about, isn't it? The water companies just being sold off and then being used as some sort of pension asset strip thing. But we know all this. And if you don't, please look it up, because it's slightly more appalling than you think. You'll actually learn more watching, the Paul Whitehouse programme about fishing. So you can learn more about the state of the rivers and everything like that. And Fergal Sharkey, yes, the singer, has become a water campaigner. And his work is really worth looking at if you are even remotely, well, not even green, just concerned about, the asset stripping and the way that we've been left out in the cold by the water companies, especially Thames Water and the like. So why is his wife so complicit in this? Why is he leaving his daughter in this? So let's have a look. What else have I got in my notes? Melting the ice. Now, there's a 1970s Big Finish story. Obviously, it's set in the 70s. It's got Tom Baker. It's got the Silurians in it. And the Silurians' master plan is, surprisingly, just to wait for the human race to bring the temperature of the planet up, and then they'll end up wiping themselves out, melt the ice caps, and make everything warmer so the Silurians can then emerge, and then it'll be fine. Oh, sorry. Did anybody out there go, hey, look, Barclay's turning into a manfish. He's a hybrid. Did anyone see hybrid? On your Doctor Who bingo cards, did anyone have hybrid written down? Let's leave that, shall we? Kate using prescriptions, please. We've covered that. And, of course, calling it the hunting ground. Well, that just smacks of how the white person treated the indigenous Americans and gave them reservations. Yeah. There are so many things that could have been dealt with here and just were skated over because all they wanted to do was talk about the dodgy romance between the dodgy guy who used to order the taxis I'm glad it's done. I'm glad it's over, and I'm glad it's over before Christmas and it's not hanging over us. But even then, even after all of the negative things I've just said, it's still 10 times better than any Doctor Who we've had for a very long time. Oh my God, I sound like all these moany YouTubers. I'm here to praise it, and it had great moments. It did. It genuinely did. But every time it went, oh, we could be doing this, it turned a corner and went, maybe it's not. Right. I've moaned a lot. Happy Christmas. Happy New Year. Oh, and if you go to the For Your Consideration on Christmas Day, you'll have a special present. I'm not saying any more than that. And if you're following it on the Tin Dog podcast feed, you'll have that in the new year. So until then, as I said, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and be seeing you. That was the Tin Dog podcast. All topics discussed are the intellectual property of the copyright owners. No infringement is intended. Why not follow the show on Blue Sky at tindogpodcast.bsky.social. If you've enjoyed this podcast on YouTube, please click like and subscribe. To contact the show, email tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk. The Tin Dog Podcast is a founder member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance.